Have you ever wondered where the name for the New Day's popular channel Up Up Down Down came from? It was a popular cheat code for the Nintendo Entertainment System. The button-mashing, 8-bit glory that was the NES featured a number of pro wrestling games. These titles ranged from awful to awesome. Today we're going to go over these games. But first, if you haven't already, please throw a like on this video and make sure you are subscribed so you can catch all of our content. Without further ado, let's get into it. The first game we're talking about is Pro Wrestling. Made by Nintendo itself and released in 1986. This is the only black box game on this list, black box referring to the box art and label design for some early Nintendo games, where the labels basically consisted of a black label, the name, Nintendo logo, and a little game art. Nintendo didn't need a WWE or WCW license to make a memorable, fun game. They created their own wrestlers like Starman, King Slender, or the Amazon, a blatant rip-off of the creature from the Black Lagoon. Starman is the 80s version of Cody Rhodes' Stardust character. Notoriously difficult, pro wrestling as players defend their Video Wrestling Federation title 10 times in a row before facing the Great Puma. Getting to that level isn't easy, but is always rewarding and a fun nostalgic push. The next game on our list is Tag Team Match Muscle. This offering was created by Bandai and released in 1986. This game was based on Japanese action figures that, while big in Japan, were not something fans in North America had ever heard of. The art style for this consisted of lots of colors and big bulky character models. Our next game is Tag Team Wrestling from 1983, produced and distributed by Data East. The date of this game makes it one of the oldest on this list. Graphically, this game will look its early age for the NES. Unfortunately, the game controls and ease of play offer a high barrier of entry for this title. This perhaps might be the hardest game on this list. Continuing right along, we have our first WWF game, and these have been included on here in no particular order. We start with WWF WrestleMania Steel Cage Challenge. This was the third of 4 WWF licensed games. In 1992, acclaimed LJN released this for the Nintendo, as well as a version for the Sega Master System. Modes include one-on-one, regular match, and steel cage match variations, Tag Team, WWF Championship, and Tag Team Championship. The roster consisted of 10 wrestlers featuring Hulk Hogan, Randy Savage, The $1 Million Man, IRS, Bret Hart, The Undertaker, Jake the Snake Roberts, Sid Justice, Roddy Piper, and the Mountie. All the wrestlers have a shared move set, and there were no individual finishing moves available. This was the first video game to include a steel cage mode. Next game on our list was WWF WrestleMania Challenge, another acclaimed LJN game, this being the second licensed release and coming on the market in 1990. The game features 9 wrestlers: Hulk Hogan, Andre the Giant, Macho King Randy Savage, The Ultimate Warrior, Big Boss Man, Brutus the Barber Beefcake, Ravishing Rick Rude, Hacksaw Jim Duggan, and yourself, a generic character. In a 2-player game, both players can choose a differently shaded version of yourself, with each having a unique theme song. Game modes include a one-on-one match, a tag team match, a 3-on-3 Survivor Series elimination match, and a championship mode. This title was originally conceived with the working name of WWF Survivor Series, thus the inclusion of that in the game mode options. The design team for this entry put the ring at an angle to give the game more of a 3D look. The third WWF game we're going to talk about is the first licensed WWF game, WWF WrestleMania. Like all of the 4 licensed WWF games, this is another game from Acclaim, released in 1989. Graphics for this were a little rougher, but the character models were still decipherable. Playable characters include 6 wrestlers: Hulk Hogan, Andre the Giant, Macho Man Randy Savage, the $1 Million Man, Bam Bam Bigelow, and the Honky Tonk Man. All the wrestlers possess rudimentary number of limited moves, which consist of basic standing punches and kicks, headbutts, a running attack, and a move off the turnbuckle. All the wrestlers had a special move unique to them as well. Also included in this game were power-up icons, which were all unique to each wrestler so the player could gain health. I would be remiss if I didn't mention the incredible MIDI versions of each wrestler's theme music. Next entry on this list is the World Championship Wrestling license, also known of course as WCW. This game was released in 1990 by FCI and was originally released in Japan in 1989 under the name Superstar Pro Wrestling, with a different lineup of wrestlers. The game was brought to America with the WCW licensing used. At the time, WCW was still part of the National Wrestling Alliance. Each wrestler in WCW Wrestling has 8 selectable moves, 2 Irish whip moves, and a finisher. Playable wrestlers in the game are Ric Flair, Sting, Lex Luger, Mike Rotundo, Road Warrior Hawk, Road Warrior Animal, Dr. Death Steve Williams, Kevin Sullivan, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, Rick Steiner, Hot Stuff Eddie Gilbert, Michael P.S. Hayes. After you defeat all of the WCW guys, one last challenge awaits in the way of the WCW Master. He is a remnant from the Japanese version and was Andre the Giant in a mask. Random fact: even though the Road Warriors are on the cover, they had already left to go wrestle in the WWF. The second to last game on this list is one of the most ambitious NES wrestling games that was available, and honestly maybe the best. The game is Tecmo World Wrestling, and Tecmo really had their stuff together back then. First off, this game was released in 1989. The graphics for this might be the best we have on this list. Gameplay features a generous in-game story and captures the feel of pro wrestling. You get well-designed wrestlers delivering powerbombs and brainbusters. The flow of matches leads to fun gameplay. The game has wrestlers choose different training exercises, a subtle addition that adds a surprising amount of depth, as well as commentary that runs at the bottom of the play screen. The game contains more than 20 moves per wrestler, as well as the game was perhaps the first to feature action replays. When certain signature moves are performed on a weakened wrestler, the game introduces a quick cut scene showing the move being performed, as if in a close-up television replay. Between matches, the player is given an option to train. Through button mashing exercises, the player performs either squats, sit-ups, or push-ups, with a sumo wrestler on his back. When the meter measuring your progress in training fills up, a sphere above the meter fills up. The more training you do, the more damage your moves will do during a match. There were 10 playable characters and 1 special wrestler you can fight at the end if you are good enough, named the Blue King. The 10 playable characters are Akira Dragon, El Tiger, Pat Gordon, Rex Beat, Boris Chekhov, Jackie Lee, Julio Falcon, Mark Rose, Dr. Gildo, and Randy Gomez. Once again, from the little I've played, I highly recommend this above all the others. The final entry brings it back to acclaim with 1993 WWF King of the Ring. This is the fourth and final WWF licensed game available on the original Nintendo. There is very little difference between WWF WrestleMania Steel Cage Challenge and WWF King of the Ring, which is not surprising as they were released just a year apart. The producers of the game replaced the Steel Cage with a King of the Ring tournament and slightly tweaked the roster. Also, they allowed for altering wrestlers' names and stats, although that couldn't be saved for future use, just while playing that session. The roster consisted of 11 wrestlers: Hulk Hogan, Randy Savage, Bret Hart, The Undertaker, Shawn Michaels, Razor Ramon, Bam Bam Bigelow, Yokozuna, Mr. Perfect, the narcissist Lex Luger, and yourself. A generic wrestler that the player can name and assign attributes for, like previously mentioned. Well, there we have it, a quick overview of all the pro wrestling games on the NES. Which one stood out to you? Any that you've played, and if so, what are your thoughts on them? Are these games nostalgic to you, or are you too young like me to have played them? Leave a comment below and let me know. Also, make sure you are subscribed here on JFM Wrestling and smash the like button. I'm also posting this to my gaming channel that I'm attempting to get off the ground, so head to JFM Gaming and subscribe over there so I can grow that channel as well. Until next time, JFM friends, live the wrestling life and game on.